So for those of you who haven't met me, I'm Deborah. I'm a Lunch and Learn virgin, so this is my first time. So thank you very much for joining today. Yosh is going to present about a half-hour presentation to you. If you've got any questions, if you could use the chat, please, and then we'll have a look at those at the end. If I could just ask everyone to put themselves on mute. And like I said, pop a question in the chat, and then we'll spend 5 minutes at the end just going through those. Thank you very much. Over to you, Yosh.
Right, awesome. Thanks everyone for joining. Deborah, if you just let the guys in as they come in, that'd be great. Thank you. So today's call is all about AI. I couldn't resist but make myself into a cyborg on this. I'm going to go across a couple of different things. Prompt engineering. There will be a conversation around Copilot versus co-work, because that seems to be a big hot topic at the moment. Then I'll show you guys some real world use cases, i.e. my actual colleagues and what they're doing with AI, and hopefully that might prompt some ideas to you. And then there's some next steps as well that you could take, including a link to some labs that we'll stick in the chat. So I think personally, a little bit more about me as well, because I guess most of you guys haven't met me yet. So I'm one of the cloud solution architects essentially at HSO UK. I specialize at the moment in AI adoption. I say at the moment is because I kind of came from a Power Platform background. And as kind of Copilot Studio came into the Power Platform, kind of started adopting that, and then worked quite heavily around the HSO user adoption for AI, be it Copilot, M365 Copilot, or Copilot Studio, or more advanced AI components. So some of you guys on the call are kind of actually working with me anyway on some adoption programs. So that's essentially what I do, hence why I'm doing this presentation. So based on that background, then I think the most important part about personal productivity with AI is prompt engineering. And really, when I say prompt engineering, is more to do with understanding and getting your head around how to talk to it. That's all that means. It doesn't have to be anything fancy, and hopefully I'll give you some techniques. So let me make sure you guys also have video sound with the sharing. So a quick video to essentially illustrate what happens when we don't do prompt engineering correctly.
Get 2 pieces of bread. Get some peanut butter. Get some jam in the peanut butter. Get a butter knife. Put the butter knife in the peanut butter. Take the butter knife out of the butter.
You did it wrong. No.
Take 1 piece of bread and take the butter knife that has the peanut butter on it and spread it all over the top of the piece of bread.
Dad,
that's the top.
I mean the sides.
Squirt some on another piece of bread. Take the butter knife, rub it all over the top of the piece of bread.
I quit. You're not making any sense. Sorry, ruined it on purpose. He knows how to make one. I know.
Get 2 pieces of bread.
So hopefully you kind of see where I'm going with this around the prompt engineering. This is very much the experience a lot of people have had when they start interacting with any AI tool, and quite frankly it frustrates us. And as soon as you're frustrated, you kind of just go, okay, well, it doesn't work, I won't use it then. This is a very typical thing that we see, right? This is why it's so important to kind of step back for a second and really think about how we actually instruct the tool to do what it is that we want it to do. The most common way people will kind of rationalize this process is this. This is one of them, as a framework called GCSE. So goal, context, source, and then expectation. So essentially what you're doing is when you're writing your instructions, you need to focus on these 4 elements. What is the response that you want from the tool. Is it an essay? Is it a poster? Is it a document? Is it bullet points? Then it's the context. So why do you need it? And who is involved and what is it? So it's the what really. So are you writing about a, I don't know, P&L statement? Are you writing about a particular technology? Are you writing about a particular project? And then the source is, where should the model go and investigate and get additional context from? We don't always have to give it a source, but we can do. So we can say, go and look on the Microsoft's technical website. Or we could say, go and look at HSO's blogs on Copilot. Or you might have some local files that you might attach to the prompt and say, this is the context that I want you to compare with. And then the last one is around your expectations. So what should the response actually look like? So please use concise language. Don't put hyperlinks and little hyphens in there. The expectation element is where you actually personalize what actually comes out. So goal, context, source, expectation. These are quite important. What you can do is you can write these in one big prompt, or you can do them in sections, right? That also works. And that's really the next point, is prompting iterations. So prompt, initially ask around your GCSE shaped prompt, read the output. What's it missing? Do we need to refine our GCSE a little bit more context? Don't give up there. Then you just go, okay, well, I've read it. It's not quite right. So therefore I'm going to refine it. And then we repeat this process until a point where we've got something good. And I think over time, the more you do this, the more comfortable you get with it. But one of my other colleagues, Latte, always says, you know, he tries to think of it as a colleague. He just kind of goes, right, if you just think you're just talking to someone, literally, he's the only person that I've ever seen call AI models dude. He's like, hey, dude, I want to do this today. How can you help me? That's okay, but no, this is not quite right. I want you to do this and that. He's doing the iteration thing, but he's just doing it in his own mind. He's made it so casual that he almost pretends as his mate, and he just goes through that iteration because it makes it easier for him to process that way. There's nothing wrong with that. That is perfectly feasible. And actually, Latte is one of our advanced users and knowledgeable guys, dudes, as he says, in this area. So it makes sense. I also try and think the same way. Here's a funny one. There's a little story just going off the mark a little bit here, but I remember another colleague of mine doing a very similar role to me in a different partner called me up initially and said, "Oh, right, have you obviously you guys been doing all the AI stuff. Have you actually had a go at the voice interaction? So you can talk to it. It's really weird." And I was like, "Yeah, I know you can do it. I just haven't done it." And he said, "Do it. It's like it will change your world." And I was like, I thought, "Okay, thanks. That's great. I'll talk to you another time. Bye." And I hung up and then left it. It still took me, I think, another 2.5, 3 weeks before I actually mustered up the juice to just actually press the button and talk to it. And it's funny because the whole time I've been doing AI adoption programs with people, but I just couldn't bring myself around to talking to it because I felt that was like a barrier. Funny enough, I was driving one time and as I was going, someone emailed me and I could obviously see it in the car's unit. And I was like, oh, okay, well, there's all these things to do, but I can't do anything about it right now, even though it's urgent. Do I pull over? Do I not pull over? And I actually ended up going, okay, do you know what? I'm just going to press the button. I pressed the button, told it some feedback based on the email, and referred it to one of the documents I've been working with. It wrote an email and sent it straight away. And I was like, wow, that's pretty amazing, right? And after that, since then, if I ever need to get a lot of information in and I don't have time, or if I'm under stress or anything else like that, again, another one of these was when we were doing some big events, and I just basically needed to talk to it. And because I had so much stuff on that I physically couldn't sit there and do prompt engineering properly, right? So I just said, okay, I'm just going to talk to Latte's dude and we're going to figure this out. And it works. So this iteration thing works, whether you do it in text, whether you do it through voice. But breaking that barrier is the key, really. So some prompting techniques, though. So when we say techniques, we're talking about specific things that you can do inside a prompt to get different outcomes, right? So some techniques. So first of all, I would like to start with few shot. Few shot, basically, all it means is give it examples, right? So paste in previous outputs that you like, whether they're text or whether you want to attach documents that are similar to what the output is that you want. This is what is termed future. All it says is give us some examples and say, I want this GCSE output. This is my expectation. This is the sources, everything else. But my expectation is similar to these 3 documents that I've uploaded in addition to this. Chain of 4 talks about reasoning. So it says, ask the model to think through the problem step by step before answering, right? So when you're going through a topic, actually go, why have you made these decisions? Actually converse to it. Again, similar to the kind of iterating through the prompts, but you basically do it through a very logistical perspective. You go, okay, do you know what? I understand what you're saying here. Why is that? Explain yourself. Show me some other options. Okay, I'm satisfied with this now. Let's now move to topic 2. Why did you think this? Where is your references for that? So this is chain of 4. You basically break problems down step by step and you rationalize with it. Also, a good one here is to bear in mind that normally when you ask a question, it comes back with a singular answer. Well, we live in a very gray world. It's not a black and white world. Normally, there's more than one answer for most questions. So what you want to do is you want to ask for multiple options. Generally, it's trying to be too helpful. It will still it down to one answer in most cases. So what we want to do is we want to avoid doing that, especially for more complicated solutions and tasks, and go, what are my options in these areas? Give me various options. You can even get it to evaluate. It can even recommend. That's okay. But it's for you to understand what that's happening in that logical process. The other one that I've kind of put together this one myself, to be honest, is framework first, is what I've called it, right? So this is a pattern, this is a technique that I've been using for a while, and it does work for me pretty well. Is ask the model to be very practical in terms of what principles it uses. So if you're writing something around project management, there is project management frameworks that are renowned that you could use. There are standards. If you're going to be writing about a particular product, there is product standards. If you're writing about technical or conversating about technical conversation, again, there are best practices. There's always frameworks around certain things that you could actually ask. The easiest one to think about is if I was going to write an essay, well, essays have got, there's frameworks around essays, right? You would have your kind of introduction, you have your summary, then you have various points, and then you have your conclusion. That's what they kind of teach you in school, right? That's a framework. So why not actually ask the AI to look up frameworks? A funny little story I say around this is generally if I was going to ask AI to drive me somewhere, I would need it really to have two things. I need to know it has an engine and the actual car to drive me, and let's assume it does because it's technology and Microsoft or whomever has provided the tech. Great, so the car is there. The second thing I need is to know that it knows how to drive. So the way I know if it knows how to drive or not is I'll ask it, do you know how to drive? And it'll obviously say yes because it's AI, right? But then I say, okay, well, what principles are you following to assume that you know how to drive? So well, I'm just looking at some websites. I'm like, okay, but that's not good enough. I need you to go and download the, driving handbook from the DVLA website and know the rules of the road. Can you go and do that? And it will say, yes, okay, I'll go and do that. Then it will go and do that and come back and say, okay, now I know how to drive and now I trust it, right? Because I've done framework first. I've gone, what is the framework of driving? Oh, it's the DVLA, UK kind of driving guidelines. So that's what I mean by framework first. I've also used this in kind of legal areas as well. So if we're doing stuff like contract reviews, what you can do is if you've got terms and policies, you could bring those in as framework, right? Because those are frameworks. You bring those in and say, I want you to review this document based on this framework. Again, that's how you kind of work with this. So bring examples, step through reasoning, and also introduce frameworks. So a couple of principles that explain why it behaves in certain ways, right? So first of all, there is a concept of token limits, right? So every prompt, so everything that you type in, plus everything that is in the history of that chat, and everything that the AI replies with, including all the attachments and everything else, all of those things cost compute power. And ultimately, what we think is that if that cost is going to hit a limit, now various different AI tools have got various limits, obviously that conversation or that session comes to an end. And the more messy the prompts, generally speaking, the more weaker the answers get. So there's two things here. There is making sure that we're not prompting the same session with a significant amount of content, because we might actually hit a limit depending on what model we're running, etc. But also knowing that it generally gets worse over time. And that kind of comes to the next point here. So to get a concise, decent, correct answer, generally speaking, the shorter the conversation, the better the output. The reason for this is because AI is generally language prediction. You would have heard predictive models, right? So the idea is that it will look at a particular sentence or a particular word and based on various parameters, it will try and guess what the next word is. So if I say cat, is it going to be fat or is it going to be shat? It could be either one, right? But it's going to probably go with sat just because it's politer and it's more likely than chat. So therefore, we'll go with that for now. And then as you give it more context, hence the word context, it kind of starts putting more rationale around it and giving you better stuff. But you can see that there is a tipping point at that. The more words you give it, then it could also then misunderstand or miscalculate. So the shorter, the sharper. I've also seen this go wrong as well with people doing like RFPs and RFIs, when we get like leads and opportunities coming in and they send us like massive questionnaires. And I've seen people just chuck the massive questionnaire in there and then assume that it answers, but it's going to answer the first couple of questions really well. And then you go down to like, I don't know, question 80 and it's just not quite there. And I've also seen it from the kind of the company's perspective, the outsider's perspective too, because I've read their questions, the first couple of questions, and I know it's already been AI generated because I can literally see the quality degrade over time. The first couple of questions are really good, and then you go towards the end and it's a bit not quite there. you can straight away see that it's AI generated essentially. So that's quality degrades over time. So break to control. So this one is really less to do with the AI itself and more towards us, right? So this one is similar to the reasoning, but all it's saying is break the complex tasks into multiple segments. In fact, you can even break it down into multiple conversations, so in different chats. So if you're writing on a particular topic, or if you're discussing a particular project and it's got 3 elements, let's say it's got CRM and it's got a dynamics section, dynamics is in, reporting section, and an integration section, we don't need to write one big prompt and have this come out all at once. What you can do is break down the sections. More than anything, it helps us rationalize what we're actually doing. So one of the things that I try and do as well is try and make sure I know what the content is that has been generated. I don't think there is any demonization in terms of using AI to create content. I think that's going to be normal whether we like it or not. The main thing is, by the time the AI is created as output, do I know what's in the output? Because ultimately, because it's going out on my outlook, therefore I'm responsible for it. The best thing I can do is therefore break it down into small sections so I know that I've done my reasoning, I've looked at the right frameworks, I'm keeping it short, and I know I'm the one who is the architect who brings all the sections together. So that's another principle to keep in mind. You could also look at it from a diagnostic thing. So a diagnostic way is kind of having a look, maybe take a quick screenshot of this, but you might get the deck anyway at the end. But basically this little table is really interesting. So it kind of says, okay, so if you look at the output and see if the output is right, but it feels off for your situation, then add context. If the output is confident but poorly reasoned, add chain of thought. So you can see you can just go through and diagnose and see what the output is missing and correct it. Sometimes you have to start a new conversation. Sometimes you can just iterate over the same thing, but it's something that is becomes second nature, basically. So where are we seeing AI kind of used today, and kind of what's the differences? So if we look at, for example, these are real people, by the way. So these are my colleagues, and these are real use cases. Daniel is our contract manager. He uses an agent to essentially review the SOWs and assess the risk of the terms associated with subcontracts. Latte is one of our team leads in delivery. He has an agent that monitors his booking. So obviously our guys get booked to different projects throughout the week. But what Latte needs to know on a Friday is the next week, has he got any site visits? Who is he booked to? Has he got any blank days that he needs to address with the customers, etc., with the project managers, etc.? And then let's just jump over to the other side. So me, for example, I work on the AI strategy and user enablement stuff. So I'm constantly doing a significant amount of research. I'm reviewing a lot of documents that get sent to me to see current states at certain organizations. And then the output is essentially using all that information and my own input to then create an enablement program based on kind of our standard frameworks. So that is where I interact with it. And then we've got Vlad on the other side, who is one of our developers, or well, this is an architect / developer, and basically he uses AI to do some delivery work. So he uses it to write code. Now, what's interesting here is you can see it kind of goes from low to high on this kind of spectrum. So the idea being the complexity. Now, the complexity of doing a review of SOWs is actually relatively simple, considering compared to doing AI delivery, AI enhanced delivery. So what I do want to highlight in this particular slide is that more complexity doesn't necessarily mean higher ROI, right? ROI is specifically based on the impact on the business, so the bottom line. For example, if I were to look at the contract review, which is kind of a low complexity, that's quite high, whereas AI infused delivery is relatively high, but I think commercially, obviously, contract review actually should be sound high. Do you see where I'm going with this? So the complexity doesn't necessarily correlate to return on investment. What the maturity correlates to is the maturity correlates to is the return on investment. So if something is high ROI, sorry, gets mixed up now. If something's high with return on investment, then what we need to do is look at the maturity and get it to a level that is better. That only because we've got personal productivity attached to it, that doesn't make it less important, right? Daniel's work is very important to us, and it is high return on investment, but you can see that it's not very advanced. We can get that together very quickly. Vlad's, on the other hand, is very advanced, but has less impact potentially. But again, if we wanted to invest in that significantly, we could increase the ROI. So the point is, it's not that simple. Look at your use cases. That's where you start. And there is levels to things. We can start quite simply, and then we can level it up, and we can bring in new systems and integrations to really bring maturity to a level where it needs to be. Okay, so I've talked a lot. I will show you one more thing before we go, because I think this is really important. This is a common ask and a common request. So just to clarify, when we open up Copilot, we get one toggle up here, right? So we've got chat, and then we've got co-work. Co-work has been released generally released recently, and it's kind of taken over the world. All good, great, but it's metered. So that means it costs us money to process these, whereas Copilot conversations don't. So one of the first things I did when someone asked me, oh, well, what's the difference? Is I said, okay, let's ask it what's the difference. So one of the first things you can do is you can go to co-work, and you can click on this little icons here, which is a prompt library, organize my inbox. So this gives you a prompt. Now, I know this is going to cost me money to run. So therefore, what I did instead is I took this prompt and I put it in the chat. So you can see what I've done here. So both M365 Copilot and Co-work can run the following prompt. And then what's the difference? Can both? So the answer is yes, both of them can, but Copilot in Outlook helps with review, summarize, prioritize, draft, and draft replies, whereas Co-work is designed to carry out multiple tasks on your behalf. Okay, this is interesting. So technically, and the recommended option is Co-work. Great, because what it does is it will review the inbox. It will actually propose a selection of actions. It will ask for any approvals it needs to, and then go and do stuff. So really what it's doing is Co-work is a delegation thing. So I can delegate Co-work to go and take actions, whereas M365 Copilot is really just helping with reviews, summaries, and drafting replies. So if we go back to Co-work then, and let's get it to do that, right? So I just asked it to go and do that. So I said, ran the prompt. It went and thought about it. It came back with a couple of stuff that's come into my inbox over in the last 24 hours. So you can see various different things. It came back with steps. So it has a plan. So it says, okay, step 1, I need to delete the stuff that's promotional. Do you want me to do that? I've approved all those. And then it's gone, okay, I've done that. Step 2, what do you want me to archive, etc. So then it's going through and actually coming with tangible things, and it's interacting with me every time to say, do you want me to go and actually make actions? This is all really good. Great. So technically, I can see that instead of just giving me an overview, what it's doing is actually going through and even drafting and sending emails if I need it to. The only thing here is, this is the catch. If we come right to the end, I say /cost. This is cost 200 credits. That's around £2. So if I were to do that every day, you're talking about £500 a year. So if you were to get a team to do that, you're talking thousands, or at least a couple of thousands, depending on how many people are in your team. So the question is then, why would I and when would I or should I use Cowork over Copilot? And this is where we kind of go back to this conversation and say, okay, hold on a minute, but they both do what I really need to do on a daily basis is review, summarize, and potentially help me with some draft writing, right? And schedule meetings. That's generally what I needed to do. I don't really need to go and get Cowork to go through and action everything. So keep the cost, the metered element of Cowork in mind. One of the most recent topics is around understanding when and when not to use Cowork. I think for the inbox scenario, it makes sense for us to use Cowork maybe when we come back from holiday, right? When there's loads of stuff there and actually that expense is justified because you just need to catch up, right? But would I run that every day? No, I wouldn't, right? Again, from personal experience, I get sent a lot of documents. I said that earlier. What I could do is I could take all those documents and all my best practices and everything else and shove it into Cowork and say, right, write me the first draft of a solution, then I'll review it. Well, that would have been fine if it was free, but it's costing us a fair bit of money, and having done that before, I know it's costing us, 50, 60 quid at a time if you want to get something really decent out of it. Because it's not just a one-shot thing. You have to do multiple times, right? And go through the iteration. And every time you go through it, it costs more and more and more. So it adds up. So on average, I'm looking, 60 to 80 pounds when this happens. So then the question is this: when I get a new request sent to me and they say, okay, here is a big document, here is all our policies, what I generally do is then I evaluate, is it worth us investing 60 to 80 pounds in Cowork, or should I basically do the first draft in Copilot, get a review, do it by hand to a point that I know that a sale is coming, for example. If there is a contract actually going to go across the board, then I can actually use Cowork because then it's justified. So that's essentially how I use it in my daily role. I kind of really think about, is it worth the expense? And I suggest everybody start thinking about that. I don't know how your IT departments are handling the changeover to the metered. Some people might have just disabled it. Some people have put a cap on it. They've got a cap on hours. What I'm actually doing in that sense then is I'm trying to make sure I don't hit my spending cap, right? For something, and I'm saving it for something that's a bit more important. On the other hand, I've seen people use Cowork for just simple research, which is just, I don't even understand how that works, because obviously it does exactly the same job as Copilot. So why would you do your research in there? Unless you've got loads of different sources and you're going to delegate it to do multiple tasks, stay in the Copilot kind of package. And then if you're going to do multiple responses or multiple outputs, then maybe consider co-work. One of the best things is you could even ask Copilot, should I use co-work for this, and why? So hopefully that's kind of giving you guys some ideas around prompt engineering, where it's kind of used, understanding where complexity, maturity, and kind of ROI kind of sit. You've got to understand that. Where is the value being generated? This isn't something that is black and white that we can tell you. It's more, how do you justify it? And it's the best example is actually having a look at what you do on a daily basis and go, should it be put through co-work? Is it worth it or not? And that's a really easy way of actually understanding that as well. Is there any questions? We've got like 3 minutes, so. No, then we'll wrap up. Nothing in the chat? No, all good?
Nothing. All good. Well, look, thank you very much for everybody attending. Those of you have been before will know, but what I will do afterwards, I will email everyone who has attended a feedback form to get your opinion. You'll also get a link, so you'll be able to see the slides that Yosh has presented today. And also, I want to say, based on the tragic results of last night, for those of you who watched the football, we'd actually like to offer each and every one of you a 3-hour session with Yosh to discuss your own personal AI adoption program or interest in agents and how that will work for your business. So in that email, I will also ask you if you would like me to set that up, and we can do that for you and your team. Thank you very much.